Krishna, dear devotees, welcome back to the daily readings of Srila Prabhupada's books. The Kali Yuga is marching on and causing chaos all over the world. Reading Srila Prabhupada's books out loud together with the devotees is the panacea which can immunize. There's all this, vaccine controversy now, anti-vaxxers they're called, But this Bhagavatam reading is the only real vaccination for the influence of the Kali Yuga, whatever symptoms it takes. So right here in the Live Studios in Hythe, Kent, southeast England, just near the English Channel, we're doing this every day, as much as possible every day, almost every day. And we welcome you and beg you to share this nectar with others so that people can hear about something that doesn't change. In the material world, everything's changing all the time. But the soul is never changing, and therefore it's hankering to hear something that doesn't change. Prabhupada's books give us that something that doesn't change. Pure spiritual sound, Shabda Brahma. Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam Mahima Stotram from the Sri Krishna Lila Stava, verses 412 through 416 by Srila Sanatana Goswami, is a beautiful glorification written in Sanskrit language of the Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, the summum bonum, the ripened fruit of the Vedic tree of knowledge. It goes like this: Sarva Shastrabdi Piyusha, Sarva Vedaika Satpala, Sarva Siddhanta Ratnaja, Sarva Lokaika Drikprada. O nectar from the ocean of all scriptures, singular fruit of all the Vedas, rich mine of the precious gems of all conclusive truths, you are the only giver of sight to all the worlds. Sarva Bhagavata Prana, Śrīmad-Bhāgavata Prabho, Kali Dvandoditaditya, Sri Krishna Parivartita. O life air of all the Supreme Lord's devotees, O Master, Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, you are the sun risen in the darkness of Kali. You are the exact image of Sri Krishna. Paramananda Pataya, Prema Varshakshadayate, Sarvada Sarvasevyaya, Sri Krishnaya Namostume. I bow down to you, who are supremely blissful to read. Your every syllable pours down a flood of prema. You can always be served by everyone. You are Sri Krishna himself. Madeka Bando Matsangin, Madguro Mad Mahadana, Mad Nistadaka Mad Bhagya, Mad Ananda Namostute. My only friend, my constant companion, my spiritual master, my great wealth, my savior, my good fortune, my source of ecstasy, I bow down to you. Asadu saduta dayin, atini chochatakara, anamunchagadachin mam, premna rit kantayokspura. O bestower of saintliness to the unsaintly, O exalter of the most fallen, please never leave me. Always appear in my heart and my voice with pure love. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So yesterday we heard how Lord Krishna blessed his Brahmana friend, Sudama. Now we're going to go on with his pastimes in Dwarka. chapter 82. Lord Krishna and Balarāma meet the inhabitants of Vṛndāvana. Once upon a time, while Lord Krishna and Balarāma were living peacefully in their great city of Dwarka, there was a rare occasion of a full solar eclipse, such as takes place at the end of every kalpa, or day of Brahma. At the end of every kalpa, the sun is covered by a great cloud, and incessant rain covers the lower planetary systems up to Swargaloka. By astronomical calculation, people were informed about this great eclipse prior to its taking place, and therefore everyone, both men and women, decided to assemble at the holy place in Kurukshetra, known as Samanta Panchaka. The Samanta Panchaka pilgrimage site is celebrated because Lord Parashuram performed great sacrifices there after killing all the Kshatriyas in the world 21 times. When Lord Parashuram killed all the Kshatriyas, their accumulated blood flowed like a stream. Lord Parashuram dug five big lakes at Samanta Panchaka and filled them with this blood. Lord Parashuram is Vishnu Tattva. As stated in the Ishopanishad, Vishnu Tattva, Vishnu Tattva cannot be contaminated by any sinful activity. Yet although Lord Parashuram is fully powerful and uncontaminated, in order to exhibit ideal character, he performed great sacrifices at Samanta Panchaka to atone for his so-called sinful killing of the Kshatriyas. By his example, Lord Parashuram established that the killing art, although sometimes necessary, is not good. Lord Parashuram considered himself culpable for the sinful killing of the Kshatriyas. Therefore, how much more culpable are we for such abominable, unsanctioned acts? Thus, from time immemorial, the killing of living entities is prohibited all over the world. Taking advantage of the occasion of the solar eclipse, all important persons from all parts of Bharatvarsha visited the holy place of pilgrimage. Some of the important personalities are mentioned as follows. Among the elderly persons were Akrura, Vāsadeva, and Ugrasena. And among the younger generation were Gada, Pradyumna, Samba, and many other members of the Yadu dynasty who had come there with the view to atone for sinful activities accrued in the course of discharging their respective duties. Because almost all the members of the Yadu dynasty went to Kurukshetra, some important personalities like Aniruddha, the son of Pradyumna, and Kritavarma, the commander-in-chief of the Yadu dynasty, along with Suchandra, Shuka, and Sarana, remained in Dwarka to protect the city. All the members of the Yadu dynasty were naturally very beautiful, yet on this occasion, when they appeared duly decorated with gold necklaces and flower garlands, dressed in valuable clothing, and properly armed with their respective weapons, their natural beauty and personalities were 100 times enhanced. The members of the Yadu dynasty came to Kurukshetra in their gorgeously decorated chariots, which resembled the airplanes of the demigods, and which were pulled by big horses that moved like the waves of the ocean. Some Yadus rode on sturdy, stalwart elephants that moved like the clouds in the sky. Their wives were carried on beautiful palanquins by beautiful men whose features resembled those of the Vidyadharas. The entire assembly looked as beautiful as an assembly of the demigods of heaven. After arriving in Kurukshetra, the members of the Yadu dynasty took their baths ceremoniously with self-control as enjoined in the Shastras, and they observed fasting for the whole period of the eclipse in order to nullify the reactions of their sinful activities. Since it is a Vedic custom to give in charity as much as possible during the hours of the eclipse, the members of the Yadu dynasty distributed many hundreds of cows in charity to the Brahmanas. All those cows were fully decorated with nice dress and ornaments. The special feature of these cows was that they had golden ankle bells and flower garlands on their necks. I lost my place. Just give me a minute. The members of the Yadu dynasty came to Kurukshetra in their gorgeously decorated chariots, which resembled the airplanes of the demigods, which were pulled by big horses that moved like the waves of the ocean. Some Yadus rode on sturdy, stalwart elephants that moved like the clouds in the sky. Their wives were carried on beautiful palanquins by beautiful men whose features resembled those of the Vidyadharas. The entire assembly looked as beautiful as an assembly of the demigods in heaven. After arriving in Kurukshetra, the members of the Yadu dynasty took their baths ceremoniously with self-control as enjoined in the Shastras, and they observed fasting for the whole period of the eclipse in order to nullify the reactions of their sinful activities. Since it is a Vedic custom to give in charity as much as possible during the hours of the eclipse, the members of the Yadu dynasty distributed many hundreds of cows in charity to the Brahmanas. All those cows were fully decorated with nice dress and ornaments. The special feature of these cows was that they had golden ankle bells and flower garlands on their necks. After the eclipse, all the members of the Yadu dynasty again took their baths in the lakes created by Lord Parashuram. Then they sumptuously fed the Brahmanas with first-class cooked food, all prepared in butter. According to the Vedic system, there are two classes of food. One is called raw food, and the other is called cooked food. Raw food does not indicate raw vegetables and raw grains, but food boiled in water, whereas cooked food is made in ghee. Chapatis, dal, rice, and ordinary vegetables are called raw foods, as are fruits and salads. But puris, kachoris, samosas, sweet balls, and so on are called cooked foods. All the Brahmanas invited on that occasion by the members of the Yadu dynasty were fed sumptuously with cooked food. The ceremonial functions performed by the members of the Yadu dynasty externally resembled the ritualistic ceremonies performed by the karmis. When a karmi performs some ritualistic ceremony, his ambition is sense gratification. Good position, good wife, good house, good children, or good wealth. But the ambition of the members of the Yadu dynasty was different. Their ambition was to offer Krishna perpetual devotion with faith. All the members of the Yadu dynasty were great devotees. As such, after many births of accumulated pious activities, they were given the chance to associate with Lord Krishna. In going to take their baths in the place of pilgrimage at Kurukshetra, in observing the regulative principles during the solar eclipse, or in feeding the brahmanas, in all these their activities, they simply thought of devotion to Krishna. Their ideal worshipable Lord was Krishna, and no one else. After the brahmanas are fed, it is the custom for the host, with their permission, to accept prasadam. Thus, with the permission of the brahmanas, all the members of the Yadu dynasty took lunch. Then they selected resting places underneath big shady trees, and when they had sufficient rest, they prepared to receive visitors, among whom were relatives and friends, as well as many subordinate kings and rulers. There were rulers of the Matsya province, Ushinara province, Koshala province, Vidarbha province, Kuru province, Srinjaya province, Kamboja province, Kekaya province, Madras province, Kunti province, Anarta province, Kerala province, and many other countries and provinces. Some of the rulers belonged to opposing parties, and some were friends. But above all, the visitors from Vṛndāvana were most prominent. The residents of Vṛndāvana, headed by Nanda Maharaj, had been living in great anxiety because of separation from Krishna and Balarāma. Taking advantage of the solar eclipse, they all came to see their life and soul, Krishna and Balarāma. The inhabitants of Vṛndāvana were well-wishers and intimate friends of the Yadu dynasty. This meeting of the two parties, after long separation, was a very touching incident. All the Yadus and the residents of Vṛndāvana felt great pleasure in meeting and talking together, that it was a unique scene. Meeting after long separation, they were all jubilant. Their hearts throbbed, and their faces appeared like freshly bloomed lotus flowers. Drops of tears fell from their eyes. The hair on their bodies stood on end, and because of their extreme ecstasy, they were temporarily speechless. In other words, they dove into the ocean of happiness. While the men were meeting in that way, the women also met one another in the same manner. They embraced one another in great friendship, smiling very mildly and looked at one another with much affection. When they were embracing one another in their arms, the saffron and kumkum spread on their breasts were exchanged from one person to another, and they all felt heavenly ecstasy. Due to such heart-to-heart embracing, torrents of tears glide down their cheeks. The juniors were offering obeisances to the elders, and the elders were offering their blessings to the juniors. Thus they welcomed one another and asked after one another's welfare. Ultimately, however, all their talk was only of Krishna. All the neighbors and relatives were connected with Lord Krishna's pastimes in this world, and as such, Krishna was the center of all their activities. Whatever activities they performed, social, political, religious, or conventional, were transcendental. The real elevation of human life rests on knowledge and renunciation. As stated in the first canto of Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, devotional service rendered to Krishna automatically produces perfect knowledge and renunciation. The family members of the Yadu dynasty and the cowherds of Vṛndāvana had their minds fixed on Krishna. That is the symptom of perfect knowledge. And because their minds were always engaged in Krishna, they were automatically freed from all material activities. This stage of life is called Yukta Vairagya, as enunciated by Srila Rupa Goswami. Knowledge and renunciation, therefore, do not mean dry speculation and renunciation of activities. Rather, one must start speaking and acting only in relationship with Krishna. In this meeting at Kurukshetra, Kunti Devi and Vāsadeva, who were sister and brother, met after a long separation, along with their respective sons and daughters-in-law, children, and other family members. By talking among themselves, they soon forgot all their past miseries. Kunti Devi especially addressed her brother Vāsadeva as follows: "My dear brother, I am very unfortunate because not one of my desires has ever been fulfilled. Otherwise, how could it happen that although I have such a saintly brother as you, perfect in all respects, you did not inquire from me as to how I was passing my days in a distressed condition of life?" It appears that Kunti Devi was remembering the miserable days when she had been banished with her sons through the mischievous plans of Dhritarashtra and Duryodhana. She continued, "My dear brother, I can understand that when providence goes against someone, even one's nearest relatives forget him. In such a condition, even one's father, one's mother, or one's own children will forget him. Therefore, my dear brother, I do not accuse you." Vāsadeva replied to his sister, "My dear sister, do not be sorry, and do not blame me in that way. We should always remember that we are all only toys in the hands of Providence. Everyone is under the control of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. It is under His control only that all kinds of fruitive actions and their reactions take place. My dear sister, you know that we were very much harassed by King Kamsa, and by his persecutions we were scattered here and there. We were always full of anxieties. Only in the last few days have we returned to our own places by the grace of God." After this conversation, Vāsadeva and Ugrasena received the kings who came to see them, and they warmly welcomed them all. Seeing Lord Krishna present on the spot, all the visitors felt transcendental pleasure and became very peaceful. Some of the prominent visitors were as follows: Bhishmadev, Dronacharya, Dhritarashtra, Duryodhana, Gandhari, along with their sons, King Yudhishthira, along with his wife, and the Pandavas, along with Kunti, as well as Sanjaya, Vidura, Kripacharya, Kunti Bhoja, Virata, Bhishmaka, King Nagdajit, Purujit, Drupada, Shalya, Drishtaketu, the king of Kashi, Dhammagosha, Vishalaksha, the king of Mithila, the king of Madras, formerly known as Madra, the king of Kekaya, Yudamanyu, Shusharma, Balika, along with his sons, and many other rulers subordinate to King Yudhishthira. When the visitors saw Lord Krishna with his thousands of queens, they were fully satisfied at the sight of such beauty and transcendental opulence. All who were there personally visited Lord Balarāma and Krishna, and being properly welcomed by them, they began to glorify the members of the Yadu dynasty, especially Krishna and Balarāma. Because Ugrasena was the king of the Bhojas, he was considered the chief Yadu, and therefore the visitors specifically addressed him: Your Majesty, Ugrasena, king of the Bhojas. Factually, the Yadus are the only persons within this world who are perfect in every respect. All glories unto you. All glories unto you. The specific condition of your perfection is that you always see Lord Krishna, who is sought by many mystic yogis, undergoing severe austerities and penances for great numbers of years. All of you are in direct touch with Lord Krishna at every moment. All the Vedic hymns glorify the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna. The Ganges water is considered sanctified because of its being the water used to wash the lotus feet of Lord Krishna. The Vedic scriptures are nothing but the injunctions of Lord Krishna. The purpose of the study of all the Vedas is known to Krishna, is to know Krishna. Therefore, the words of Krishna and the message of his pastimes are always purifying. By the influence of time and circumstances, all the opulences of this world were almost completely wiped out. But since Krishna has appeared on this planet, all auspicious features have again appeared due to the touch of his lotus feet. Because of his presence, all our ambitions and desires are gradually being fulfilled. Your Majesty, King of the Bhojas, you were related with the Yadu dynasty by matrimonial relationship and by blood relationship also. As a result, you are constantly associating with Lord Krishna, and you have no difficulty in seeing him or touching him at any time. Lord Krishna moves with you, talks with you, sits with you, rests with you, and dines with you. The Yadus appear to be always engaged in worldly affairs, which are considered to be the royal road to hell. But due to the presence of Lord Krishna, the original personality of Godhead in the Vishnu category, who is omniscient, omnipresent, and omnipotent, all of you are factually relieved from all material contamination and are situated in the transcendental position of liberation and Brahman existence. When Nanda Maharaj and the other residents of Vṛndāvana had heard that Krishna would be present in Kurukshetra because of the solar eclipse, and that all the members of the Yadu dynasty would also be there, they had immediately prepared to go there. King Nanda, accompanied by his cowherd men, had loaded all their necessary paraphernalia on bullock carts, and all of the Vṛndāvana residents had come to Kurukshetra to see their beloved sons, Lord Balarāma and Lord Krishna. When the cowherd men of Vṛndāvana arrived at Kurukshetra, all the members of the Yadu dynasty were most pleased. As soon as they saw the residents of Vṛndāvana, they stood up to welcome them and appeared to have regained their life. All the Yadus and Vṛndāvana residents had been very eager to meet, and when they actually came forward and met, they embraced one another to their heart's satisfaction and remained in embrace for a considerable time. As soon as Vyāsadeva saw Nanda Maharaj, Vyāsadeva jumped up and ran over to him and embraced him very affectionately. Vyāsadeva began to narrate his own past history, how he had been imprisoned by King Kamsa, how his babies had been killed, how immediately after Krishna's birth he had carried Krishna to the place of Nanda Maharaj, and how Krishna and Balarāma had been raised by Nanda and Nanda Maharaj and his queen, Yashoda, as their own children. Similarly, Lord Balarāma and Krishna also embraced King Nanda and Mother Yashoda, and then they offered their respect under their lotus feet by bowing down. Because of their feeling affection for Nanda and Yashoda, Lord Krishna and Balarāma became choked up, and for a few seconds they could not speak. the most fortunate King Nanda and Mother Yashoda placed their sons on their laps and began to embrace them to their full satisfaction. Because of separation from Krishna and Balarāma, King Nanda and Yashoda had been merged in great distress for a very long time. Now, after meeting them and embracing them, all their sufferings were mitigated. After this, Krishna's mother, Devaki, and Balarāma's mother, Rohini, both embraced Mother Yashoda. They said, "Dear Queen Yashoda Devi, you and Nanda Maharaj have been great friends to us, and when we remember you, we are immediately overwhelmed by the thought of your friendly activities. We are so indebted to you that even if we were to return your benediction by giving you the opulence of the King of Heaven, it would not be enough to repay you for your friendly behavior. We shall never forget your kindly behavior toward us. When Krishna and Balarāma were born, before they even saw their real father and mother, they were entrusted to your care, and you raised them as your own children, fostering them as birds take care of their offspring in the nest. You have nicely fed, nourished, and loved them, and have performed many auspicious religious ceremonies for their benefit. Actually, they are not our sons. They belong to you. Nanda Maharaj and you are the real father and mother of Krishna and Balarāma." As long as they were under your care, they had not even a pinch of difficulty. Under your protection, they were completely out of the way of all kinds of fear. This most affectionate care which you have taken for them is completely befitting your elevated position. The most noble personalities do not discriminate between their own sons and the sons of others, and there cannot be any personalities more noble than Nanda Maharaj and you. As far as the gopis of Vṛndāvana were concerned, from the very beginning of their lives, they did not know anything beyond Krishna. Krishna and Balarāma were their life and soul. The gopis were so attached to Krishna that they could not tolerate not seeing him even momentarily when their eyelids blinked and impeded their vision. They condemned Brahma, the creator of the body, because he foolishly made eyelids which blinked and checked their seeing Krishna. Because they had been separated from Krishna for so many years, the gopis, having come along with Nanda Maharaj and Mother Yashoda, felt intense ecstasy upon seeing Krishna. No one can even imagine how eager the gopis were to see Krishna again. As soon as Krishna became visible to them, they took him aside. As soon as Krishna became visible to them, they took him aside, inside their hearts, through their eyes, and embraced him to their full satisfaction. Even though they were embracing Krishna only mentally, they became so ecstatic and overwhelmed with joy that for the time being they completely forgot themselves. The ecstatic trance they achieved simply by mentally embracing Krishna is impossible to achieve even for great yogis constantly engaged in meditation on the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Krishna could understand that the gopis were wrapped in ecstasy by embracing them in his mind. Krishna could understand that the gopis were wrapped in ecstasy by embracing him in their minds, and therefore, since he is present in everyone's heart, he reciprocated in the embracing from within. Krishna was sitting with Mother Yashoda and his other mothers, Devaki and Rohini, but when the mothers engaged in talking, he took the opportunity and went to a secluded place to meet the gopis. As soon as he approached the gopis, the Lord smiled, and after embracing them and inquiring about their welfare, he began to encourage them, saying, "My dear friends, you know that Lord Balarāma and I left Vṛndāvana just to please our relatives and family members. Thus, we were long engaged in fighting with our enemies and were obliged to forget you, who were so much attached to me in love and affection. I can understand that I have been ungrateful to you, but still I know that you are faithful to me. May I inquire if you have been thinking of me, although I had to leave you behind? My dear gopis, do you now dislike remembering me, considering me to have been ungrateful to you? Do you take my misbehavior with you very seriously? After all, you should know that it was not my intention to leave you. Our separation was ordained by Providence, who after all is the supreme controller and does as he desires. He causes the intermingling of different persons and again disperses them as he desires. Sometimes we see that a strong wind will mingle together clouds, atomic particles of dust, or broken pieces of cotton. And after this strong wind subsides, all the clouds, particles of dust, and pieces of cotton are again separated, scattered in different places. Similarly, the Supreme Lord is the creator of everything. The objects we see are different manifestations of his energy. By his supreme will, we are sometimes united and sometimes separated. We can therefore conclude that ultimately we are absolutely dependent on his will. Fortunately, you have developed loving affection for me, which is the only way to achieve the transcendental position of association with me. Any living entity who develops such unalloyed devotional affection for me certainly at the end goes back home, back to Godhead. In other words, unalloyed devotional service and affection for me are the cause of supreme liberation. My dear Gopi friends, you may know from me that it is my energies only which are acting everywhere. Take, for example, an earthen pot. It is nothing but a combination of earth, water, air, fire, and sky. It is always of the same physical composition, whether in its beginning, during its existence, or after its annihilation. When it is created, the earthen pot is made of earth, water, fire, air, and sky. While it remains, it is the same in composition. And when it is broken and annihilated, its different ingredients are conserved in different parts of the material energy. Similarly, at the creation of this cosmic manifestation, during its maintenance and after its dissolution, everything is but a different manifestation of my energy. And because the energy is not separate from me, it is to be concluded that I am existing in everything. In the same way, the body of a living being is nothing but a composition of the five elements, and the living entity embodied in the material condition is also part and parcel of me. The living entity is imprisoned in the material condition on account of his false conception of himself as the supreme enjoyer. This false ego of the living entity is the cause of his imprisonment in material existence. As the Supreme Absolute Truth, I am transcendental to the living entity, as well as to his material embodiment. The two energies, material and spiritual, both act under my supreme control. My dear gopis, I request that instead of being afflicted, you try to accept everything with a philosophical attitude. then you will understand that you are always with me, and that there is no cause of lamentation in our being separated from one another. This important instruction by Lord Krishna to the gopis can be utilized by all devotees engaged in Krishna consciousness. The whole philosophy is considered on the basis of inconceivable, simultaneous oneness and difference. In the Bhagavad Gita, the Lord says that He is present everywhere in His impersonal feature. Everything exists in Him, and still He is not personally present everywhere. The cosmic manifestation is nothing but a display of Krishna's energy, and because the energy is not different from the energetic, nothing is different from Krishna. When this absolute consciousness, Krishna consciousness, is absent, we are separated from Krishna. But fortunately, if this Krishna consciousness is present, then we are not separated from Krishna. The process of devotional service is the revival of Krishna consciousness. And if the devotee is fortunate enough to understand that the material energy is not separate from Krishna, then he can utilize the material energy and its products in the service of the Lord. But in the absence of Krishna consciousness, the forgetful living entity, although part and parcel of Krishna, falsely puts himself in the position of enjoyer of the material world, and being thus implicated in material entanglement, is forced by the material energy to continue his material existence. This is confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita. Although the living entity is forced to act by the material energy, he falsely thinks that he is the all in all and the supreme enjoyer. If the devotee knows perfectly that the Archa Vigraha, or deity form of Lord Krishna in the temple, is exactly the same Satchidananda Vigraha as Krishna himself, then his service to the temple deity becomes direct service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Similarly, the temple itself, the temple paraphernalia, and the food offered to the deity are also not separate from Krishna. One has to follow the rules and regulations prescribed by the Acharyas, and thus, under superior guidance, Krishna realization is fully possible, even in this material existence. The gopis, having been instructed by Krishna in the philosophy of simultaneous oneness and difference, remained always in Krishna consciousness, and thus became liberated from all material contamination. The consciousness of the living entity who falsely presents himself as the enjoyer of the material world is called Jiva Kosha, which means imprisonment by the false ego. Not only the gopis, but anyone who follows these instructions of Krishna is immediately freed from the Jiva Kosha imprisonment. A person in full Krishna consciousness is always liberated from false egoism. He utilizes everything for Krishna's service and is not at any time separated from Krishna. The gopis therefore prayed to Krishna, "Dear Krishna, from your navel emanated the original lotus flower, which is the birth site of Brahma, the Creator. No one can estimate your glories or your opulence, which therefore remain always a mystery, even to the highest thoughtful men, the masters of all yogic power. However, the conditioned soul fallen in the dark well of this material existence can very easily take shelter of your lotus feet. Thus, his deliverance is guaranteed." The gopis continued, "Dear Krishna, We are always busy in our family affairs. We therefore request that you remain within our hearts as the rising sun. That will be your greatest benediction. The gopis are always liberated. The gopis are always liberated souls because they are fully in Krishna consciousness. They only pretended to be entangled in household affairs in Vṛndāvana. Because of their separation from Krishna, he might have asked them to return with him to his capital city, Dwarka. But the inhabitants of Vṛndāvana, the gopis, were not interested in the idea of going with Krishna to Dwarka. They wanted to remain busy in Vṛndāvana and thus feel the presence of Krishna in every step of their lives. They immediately invited Krishna to come back to Vṛndāvana. This transcendental, emotional existence of the gopis is the basic principle of Lord Chaitanya's teaching. The Ratha Yatra festival, observed by Lord Chaitanya, is the emotional process of taking Krishna back to Vṛndāvana. Srimati Radharani refused to go with Krishna to Dwarka to enjoy his company in the atmosphere of royal opulence, for she wanted to enjoy his company in the original Vṛndāvana atmosphere. Lord Krishna, being profoundly attached to the gopis, never goes away from Vṛndāvana, and the gopis and other residents of Vṛndāvana remain fully satisfied in Krishna consciousness. Thus ends the Bhaktivedanta purport of the 82nd chapter of Krishna. Lord Krishna and Balarāma meet the inhabitants of Vṛndāvana. All glories to the powerful love of the residents of Vṛndāvana for Krishna and Balarāma. All glories to the powerful, affectionate dealings between the Yadus and the Vṛndāvana and the Vṛndāvana Vasis. Hare Krishna. Well, that was, as we say, a tearjerker. Hare Krishna. So we'll stop the reading now. It's a little after 8 o'clock. And beg the assembled Vaishnavas that they share with us their reflections and discuss this wonderful chapter of Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam.
First is from Devadharana.
Devadharana, Haribol.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Śrīla Prabhupāda. I am so happy to hear you again. Thank you. From Gopakanya.
Gopakanya Devidasi, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, dear Maharaj and all friends, the panacea of Kali Yuga. Jai Shri Krishna Katha. All glories to Śrīla Prabhupāda and your divine service of daily reading of Śrīla Prabhupāda's books, Maharaj.
Hare Krishna. Thank you so much, Hare Krishna.
Sudevi Dasi says Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Sudevi, Hare Krishna.
Rati Manjari says Jai Guru Maharaj.
Jai Rati, Haribo, Haribo.
Bhakti Noel says Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Hare Krishna, Bhakti Noel.
Brian Phillips
Bhakti Brian, Haribo.
says Hare Krishna Maharaj, please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to
Jai,
Śrīla
glory to
Prabhupada.
Prabhupada.
Something from Gauranga Gopal.
Hey, Gauranga, Haribo.
He says, Hare Krishna Maharaj, please accept my humble obeisances.
Jai, Jai, glories to Prabhupada.
At the end of my Sankirtan day today in Winchester, someone came to see me telling me, "I am Tribhuvanat Prabhu's nephew." I felt quite pleased to meet with him, but then he said, "Before you say anything, I am a full-on atheist, and I believe I am my brain." Anyway, we had a very nice chat, actually, and without preaching openly to him, I tried to call for his common sense so he could hopefully understand his uncle's life choice. I was glad as I remember that thanks to his uncle's pure devotional service to Srila Prabhupada, he would also get some benefits and eventually get to meet with Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Very nice. This is devotees' consciousness, pure devotees' consciousness, is always thinking up to the welfare of others. Yes. Hare Krishna. Very nice. Thank you for that, sharing that experience. Transcendental experience. Yeah.
And from Saloni Sachi Sundari.
Sulani Sachi Sundari, Hari Bol.
It says, "Hare Krishna Maharaj, all glories to Srila Prabhupada, all glories to the nectar."
Jai Ho. I thank all of you, and I thank Srila Prabhupada and Lord Chaitanya, the Panchatattva, 6 Goswamis from Vṛndāvana, Lord Nityananda, Radha and Krishna, Giriraj, Govardhan, and all the Vaishnavas for bringing me into contact with all of you and allowing me to every day relish hearing about Krishna and the association of those who relish hearing about Krishna. Hare Krishna. This is the solution, or the solution to all the world's problems are to be found in sharing these pastimes and then trying to emulate them in our own characters, in personal lives and relationships. Sri Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Wait, something else is coming.
From Anandamurti Devi Dasi.
Hare Krishna Anandamurti.
He says, "Hare Krishna Gurudev and all devotees, please accept my humble obeisances.
Jai Hari Bol.
All glories to Srila Prabhupada." Thank you so much for reading Nectar every day. Today I have heard Srimati Radharani and the gopis are the most exalted because they never would like to go to Dwarka with Krishna. They even would like to stay in Vṛndāvana with full Krishna consciousness. And from Bhakti Rupa.
Because Krishna never leaves Vṛndāvana. They act like village girls, but they know everything. And time and again, whenever they actually speak, their thoughts are so profound and so, as we say in the West, spot on, that it's impossible not to realize and see for ourselves their exalted positions. And the fact is that Krishna, in the original Swayam Rupa form, never leaves Vṛndāvana, and therefore they never want to leave Vṛndāvana. They're eternal residents of Vṛndāvana. Only in the Prakat Leela does Krishna appear to go from one place to another. And in the spiritual world, all three places, Vṛndāvana, Mathura, and Dwarka, are going on simultaneously. So Krishna is in all three forms, in his original Swayam Rupa, or in his expansions as Vyāsadeva Krishna. And still, he's the same person. He's the same person and he's not the same person. So this is the mystery of Krishna's unlimited and eternal pastimes. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
And from Bhakti Rupa.
Haribo Bhakti Rupa.
He says, "Hare Krishna Maharaj, thank you so much for reading today. Really amazing to hear about the meeting of Krishna's devotees at Kurukshetra. And from Rati Manjari,
Jai Rati.
she says, Dear Guru Maharaj, please accept my humble obeisances. Tonight we heard such intimate talks between Krishna's exalted devotees. It is amazingly amazing that we can hear these things.
Yes, it definitely is. And even more amazing is that we can understand to some degree what they actually are. This is, sometimes we may take for granted because we've been devotees for a long time and we're accustomed to being in this atmosphere and hearing these wonderful things. But I tell you, when you look out the window and see what people are doing, what they're thinking, and how they're acting, and how they're feeling, and what they know, we are actually have been elevated by Lord Chaitanya and our acharyas and Srila Prabhupada to this position. Whether we accept it or not, whether we fully understand it or not, that's the situation. And we hear it again and again in these pastimes, how the yogis, by their austerities and their yogic perfections, are searching for Krishna to be able to be with Krishna. Yet these personalities come out of the pages of Bhagavatam and associate with us, and we associate with them, and it's just conceivably good fortune.
From Bhaktamatsu,
Bhaktamatsu, Haribol.
he says, Please accept my humble obeisances, all glories to Srila Prabhupada. Maharaj, as we read the Gaudiya literatures and songs of our Vaishnava acharyas, there is often a Shruti Pala offered at the end of a chapter or prayer, like the obtainment of Krishna Prema and so on, but this result is not immediately perceived. Can you please expand on the purpose of these Shruti Palas?
Well, we do hear the Shruti Palas when we read the chapters. It's straightforward. The speakers of the Bhagavatam, after these pastimes, are blessing all those who hear them. Like Krishna Das Kaviraj Goswami, he glorifies the hearers who are hearing with pure intention, worships them, and considers his life and his service of speaking Chaitanya Charitamrita to be successful because the hearers are hearing. There's nothing esoteric or more to it than that. It's just the well-wishing of the great souls who compose these scriptures or who bring these scriptures into the material atmosphere. The unlimited, causeless mercy of them upon the fallen conditioned souls. That's all. Hare Krishna.
No. As of now, the last comment from Rati Manjari.
Okay, Rati, Haribol.
She says, the Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam is like a transcendental looking glass, which brings into view these highest transcendental exchanges, which are fully satisfying to our thirsty souls.
Yes.
Truly fascinating. Thank you deeply for your swift delivery with your disarmingly friendly and happy voice.
Hare Krishna. Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Ki Jai. Samaveda Bhaktivedanta Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories, all glories, all glories to Sri Sri Guru and Gauranga. Gaur Premanandi. Hare Bol. See you tomorrow night. Same time, same place, same topic. The unlimited Chintamani jeweled Vṛndāvana pastimes, Mathura pastimes, and Dwarka pastimes of Sri Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Hare Krishna. See you tomorrow night.